Well, the name of my book says it all, because it's all happened. Punched, kicked, spat on, and sometimes thanked. I always thought that would be a great title for a policeman too, because with the abuse those guys are taking these days, and gals, that would be a great title for them. But it was a really interesting career. I began in 1969 on the radio in a small town that I grew up in, Elmira, New York. A guy in my high school had a job on the radio station. So I said, hey, how'd you get that job? And he told me you had to get a license from the FCC and stuff, which I did. And so then in the summer of '69, right before my senior year of high school, I said, hey, how's it going at the radio station? He said, well, I'm gonna quit tomorrow. I said, really, why? He said, well, I got drafted, I'm going to Vietnam. I said, oh, do you care if I go apply for your job? He said, no, I'm going to Vietnam, what do I care? So I did, went up and applied for the job, and the guy had me read some wire copy off the UPI machine. I read it, and he said, is your father Joe? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, I knew him in high school. He had me start the next Saturday at $1.60 an hour. And I was not worth that much because I was a terrible disc jockey. Some years go by and I was working at a little bit bigger radio station in Elmira while I was in college now, high school and college. And the news director came over to me one day and said, why are you going to college? I said, well, it's what my parents expect, and you know, it's always been expected. He goes, well, you want to be a DJ? And I said, well, yeah. He said, well, if you want to be a DJ, why are you going to college? Because you're not very good. I was a little bit surprised when he said that. He said, you should really, if you want to be a DJ, quit college and do this. So I thought about it for a minute, and he said, look, why don't you cover city council for me? You seem like you got a level head on your shoulders on Monday night. So I covered council for him, and I loved it. And that was it. I was done with the DJ business. I became a news guy. And over the course of college, by the time I was a senior, I was doing some TV work, got a job in Binghamton, New York, did a talk show there as well as anchoring the noon news. Then came to Youngstown, Ohio, 42 years ago, and worked in Youngstown where I met some interesting characters for sure. And then Cleveland, Ohio back in 1981 at Channel 5. And then moved in 1985 to Channel 3. And then after that in, 1997, moved over to Channel 19. So it's been an interesting career, and I retired in 2020 after all those years on Cleveland television. 40 years on Cleveland television. And the book, basically, I've got a lot of funny stories, I think. Some of them are serious, make no mistake, but a lot of funny stuff. For example, in 1985, January of '85, we went down to Washington, D.C. for Ronald Reagan's inauguration parade. And some local high school bands were going to be in it, in the Medina County Mounted Unit, stuff like that. Just a little bit of local flavor. So we went down to it, and that was the one that they canceled because it was so cold, 2 degrees. And so they canceled the parade. Well, the station had sent me, so we have to come up with some sort of a story. So I was in front of the White House, and I'm wiring down, they were wiring down the sewer caps. I was doing a story about them wiring down the sewer caps because they were afraid that somebody might throw a smoke bomb down there and disrupt the parade. Well, today we'd be worried about ricin or something like that. Well, I'm doing the stand-up, and I cannot get it right. And I'm messing up time after time, and the camera guy's like, come on, geez, I'm freezing here. 2 degrees, as I say. So I'm almost done with a good take after so many bad takes. And a guy jumps out of a limo when I was just about done with my stand-up portion of it. And he puts his hand out and he wrecked my take. He says, hey man, where are you from? What's going on? So I said, hey pal, why don't you take a hike? There might have been an expletive in there as well. And he puts his hand out and goes, hi, Mike Love of the Beach Boys. It was. So my big mouth got me in some trouble over the years, that's for darn sure as well. But I said, hey Mike, can we talk to you real quick? He was very generous, very nice with his time. He said, yeah, ssure. So I talked to him, and he starts going back to his limo and says, hey, MMS rocks, I'll see it blossom this summer. That was the last I ever saw him. But he was nice despite my rude treatment of him. Being a news reporter really lets you behind the scenes. You know, a few minutes after the quarterback throws the winning touchdown pass in overtime, there you are in the locker room. I've always been a big fan, particularly as a kid, of the space race. So I've been a fan of aviation. Well, in my career, I flew with the Blue Angels, went on NASA's Vomit Comet, they call it, the weightless plane. I did not throw up. I did with the Blue Angels, however. Met a lot of astronauts, a ton of astronauts. And so that curiosity, I've been on the Goodyear blimp. Being curious is a good trait for any young and aspiring reporters. And sometimes asking an off-the-wall question. I found has gotten me some interesting comments. For example, I always wanted to interview Jim Lovell from Apollo 13. Well, he was going to be in town in Parma. They were naming a playground after him. He went to school there for a little bit of time when he was very young. And so they had another story for me. So I said, wait a minute, I got to meet Jim Lovell. He said, well, you got to do this other story. I said, I'll do both. Just let me go meet Jim Lovell. So I went down and met Jim Lovell, and I said, introduced myself. We did a story about the park and dedication and him growing up here. And I said, I've got a question you've never been asked. And he said, I don't know, Paul. I think I've been asked every question. And so I said, okay, well, let's go. Did you guys really like Tang? He said, no, I've never been asked that question. And so he told me about Tang, and the fact the astronauts didn't like it. NASA did, because they had to deal with, I don't know if it was General Foods or some company that made Tang. The astronauts liked some other product because it had pulp in it. But NASA said no, so Tang became the go-to drink for the astronauts when they were launched into space. You have to be careful as a reporter. You have to know your town, know where you are, not getting into situations that you can't get out of. In parts of there are parts of the city where you just know you're going to be confronted when you go there. So I'm on the near west side of Cleveland, 65th. I've been attacked physically probably 15 times over the years, and I bet 6 of them were on either Lawn Avenue or Colgate. Colgate Court is even worse because the houses there are kind of like garages. And not to denigrate the people, but there's an attitude there. And early in the day, you might go there after some pit bull attack or something, and they've been drinking, and they're not afraid to let you know that they don't want you in their neighborhood. You try to explain, it certainly doesn't always work. It certainly didn't work with Prince's bodyguard. Prince was coming to town. I had a tip from the limo driver that he was going to be landing at Burke Airport at a certain time. And so, and he was going to go see Sheila E., his girlfriend at the time, over at the Agora, which was downtown. And so we go to the airport. I have another cameraman over at the Agora just in case I missed him. And sure enough, right as he said, here came the Learjet, and this big burly guy gets off and says, sorry guys, Prince don't want any pictures. I said, well, look, we're here to take pictures. I don't want any trouble. But he says, well, you don't seem to understand. Prince don't want any pictures. I said, look, I don't want any trouble. He says, I told you Prince don't want any effing pictures. So I said, buddy, and before I grab me by the tie and the shirt, he threw me like a softball. And so with the bloody hands and knees. And then he goes after the camera guy. My camera guy, Tom Livingston, got the shot of Prince, and off they went. Well, there were 2 limos. They had a decoy. I knew the right one. So we had a microphone in the limo. So I was driving, chasing the limo because we're ticked off because we got roughed up. And they're going down one-way streets the wrong way and through some red lights. And so I'm following, and Tom had the earphones on, shooting video. And he says, boy, they're mad that you knew the right limo to follow. And I said, well, let me know when you got enough. So after a couple more blocks, he said, I got enough. So we went to the Agora, and don't you know, when the limo pulls up, who's the first one out but this guy? My mouth didn't get me in trouble on this one, but my actions probably did. So when he gets out, he's looking at us, and he's staring daggers at us. So I give him like a Mr. Rogers kind of I knew you were here. He was like a bull in a china shop, just come on, punching and kicking. And one of the cameramen had a torn ligament in his arm from where he pushed. And the cameras were very heavy in those days. And then Tom had a black eye from where he pushed the lens of the camera back into Tom's face. So it wasn't it wasn't a pleasant night particularly. He was later, subsequent to that, he was fired. And there was a big lawsuit over the cameraman with the torn arm, and I was deposed, Prince was deposed. On the serious side, you'll never forget your first fatal accident. I was just 19 years old or so, and there was a report of a young boy, 10 or so years old, hit by a car. Well, I went there, and I could see off in the distance there was some activity. I had a film camera with me, and I went up and I saw kind of a mangled bike and dents in the car. And then I saw this little form underneath a blanket, and it was the boy. And that wasn't what struck me so much as the fact that there was a half-melted ice cream cone next to him. Now, that was 40, I don't know, almost 50 years ago, 49 years ago. But it just struck me that I have this picture still in my head of this kid crossing the street because the ice cream store was on the other side of the street. Crossing the street, happy as can be with this ice cream cone, not paying attention probably. And he was struck and killed, and the ice cream cone lasted longer than he did. So again, 49 years later, and I still remember it. One time we got the bright idea to prove that the ads in the back of some of the weekly newspapers were for prostitution, not massages, as they had claimed. And so we rented 2 hotel rooms next to one another, had the camera guy, the station security guard, and another camera guy in one room with a lot of the equipment, some hidden cameras in my room, and they were attached. And we had to get the guy, when we called and the guy came, I had to get him to say enough to show that it was prostitution. So they show up, and I said, yeah, come on in. So he came in, and the buzzword that I was supposed to say was, I don't think this is going to work out, when I had enough on tape to prove that it was prostitution. And certainly we can't pay for anything, we can't do anything illegal. And so I'm talking to the guy, and I had a wireless microphone down my sleeve. And so I'm talking, and he's getting frustrated because he's telling me there's $180 for one girl or $240, came with 2. And so tell me this, tell me that. What's going to be? What's going to be? He's getting agitated now. So finally I had enough on tape. And I said, are you a full service agency? That was the buzzword in those days. So I said, I don't think this is going to work out. He said, what? No, I'm waiting for my guys to come out and rescue me, right? I said, yeah, I don't think this is going to work out. And I don't care if it's going to work out or not. You owe me X number of dollars or I'm going to kick your rear end, So now, yeah, in the book, there's actually pictures from the video. You see me talking to him. Then you see me like this because I had my hand up to my sleeve where the microphone was. I don't think this is going to work out. Nothing. Well, so I told him, because he's coming at me now. And I said, look, buddy, this is all being recorded. You're on TV. And one of the girls said, yeah, I thought I recognized him. And off they went. And then I turn around, you see I'm like this on the tape. And so they came out, and it was too late. They were on the elevator. It turns out, of all this equipment, probably $10,000 worth of equipment we had there that day, the 40-cent battery went dead in my wireless microphone. And as I do say in the book, I carried extra batteries in my briefcase till the day I retired about a year ago. So Youngstown was an interesting place to work because some of the characters that I met down there were up-and-comers. Jim Trafficant, one of the most colorful characters I've ever met. Eddie DeBarlo of the DeBarlo Corporation, later owned the 49ers. Carmen Policy, his lawyer, who later was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And Boom Boom Mancini, very young man at that time. His family used to sell tickets to his fights. They'd be on the dining room table. So, and a lot of up-and-comers, and I always remembered that about them. No, you never know on your way up who you're going to meet because they're probably on the way up too. And so Youngstown was a very, very interesting spot to work. You're privileged in a lot of ways politically as well, because I've met probably every president for the past 6 or 7 presidents, and they all have got a certain dynamism to them. But you're kind of awestruck when you meet these individuals and cover conventions and things like that. So I was down on the floor of the convention in 2016 here in Cleveland, and I had a unique experience. I had the highest credential that you could have because I was going to be on the floor right in front of where they were making the speeches and stuff. Well, I had like 3 or 4 credentials around my neck. And so one day we were walking, we had to walk about a mile with all this equipment. I was in front of the convention center, and I saw this guy had a card table, and he's sitting at the card table, and he's got a computer. He looked like an FBI guy. I didn't think too much of it. But the next day when we went by, I wondered, what he was doing. And so after I went by him, I stopped, and I turned around, and I looked, and there was my picture, who I worked for, my bio, everything you'd ever want to know about me. And he never touched me. He never came in contact with me. Turns out there was a chip in the one of the credentials, the highest credential that I had. So I don't know if Big Brother's watching, but if Big Brother wants to watch, Big Brother certainly can watch. Really not any desire to go back to it. It was just the right time. Everybody had always said that, you'll know when it's time. And I did. I knew when it was time. In retirement, COVID hit, so I went down into the basement, and this is the end product of that, looking up old stories. I've written down a little one-sentence summation of what I've done every day. 6 o'clock plane crash, 11 o'clock plane crash follow, since probably 1976. And so that was very, very helpful in getting the book written. And then after that, somebody called me from the Catholic radio station and asked me, they said, hey, the network used to do a show on vocations. We're looking for a good interviewer. You want to talk to people about their vocations, whether it be single life, whatever it is. It's on AM 1260, the old Wixie 1260 on Sunday afternoons. But they said, would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, sure. So as something that didn't surprise me, he said, now you know it's for the church, so you know it's for free. I said, yeah, I figured. So, but I'm having a lot of fun doing that. So I'm kind of using those talents and having a lot of fun talking to people about their how they discern whatever it is they want to do with their lives, not necessarily just the priesthood, but whatever they've chosen to do. Something that put me on the map is probably a story I did about the Cleveland police. It was a story about them goofing off at the old Deaconess Hospital. And a policeman or two taking a little extra lunch, no big deal. Well, the story here was they were taking most of their shift, 5 and 6 hours, is what I was told. So we went there one night, happened to be driving by, and I look, and there's a couple of police cars there at the emergency room, which is not at all unusual. But then I looked in the parking garage, and there's like 7 police cars, including supervisors, lieutenants, stuff like that. So it was clearly a problem. So we went for the next few nights and did the story. It was called Car 224, Where Are You? Well, apparently the guys on Car 224 didn't like the story very much because they wrote tickets against me, fake tickets. The following Sunday, the story was on Thursday and Friday, the following Sunday they wrote these fake tickets on me and put it in the system. The copy would go to me, they threw in the garbage. Well, I never went to court because I never got a ticket. So, okay, so after that, when we don't go to court, an arrest warrant goes out for you. So an arrest warrant went out for me. Well, after some number of months, luckily I was never pulled over, after some number of months, you're put on the NCIC crime computer nationwide as a fugitive from justice, which I was now. I never got a ticket or anything like that. And so one day, city councilman's walking by the front door of the TV station as I was walking in. He goes, hey, you're in some trouble. I said, what are you talking about? He said, there's an arrest warrant out for you. I said, get out. He goes, no, I'm not kidding. There's an arrest warrant out for you. And he told me who he heard it from, and it was a good source. So I called the clerk of courts, and I told him. He started laughing. I said, well, check. He came back to the phone. He said, you better get over here. So I went to the clerk of court's office, and he said, sign your name on this blank piece of paper, which I did. It didn't match. And a big investigation was launched. And because of the investigation, 2 guys they were the guys on Car 224 who weren't named in the story either. They really wouldn't have been in much trouble. Well, they got 5 felonies as a result of that: forgery for signing my name, perjury for attesting the ticket's true, and tampering with records, things like that. But it had a good effect, if that makes any sense. A good effect from the standpoint that it kind of put me on the map. The I-team at Channel 8, Tom Meyer and Carl Monday, were the big shots in town as far as that type of work. And this kind of elevated me a little bit to that level. And then Channel 3 had me do mostly investigative stuff after that. And so it put me on the map, I guess. It also got me a decent raise, so that wasn't a bad thing. But you know, when it came down to it, it was probably meant as a joke, but it was a dumb joke. And now they lost their jobs and their families are going to suffer. So, you know, it was not a smart thing to do in their case. A funny aside to that, of course, is the fact that my wife said, we got to get a security system. You're working at night and we're here alone at night when you're working. I said, oh, you don't need a security system. It's just a couple of guys. Bad joke. And he said, no, we're getting a security system. So we went back and forth for a few days. I said no, she said yes. So we had one of those marital compromises and we got it. You know how that goes. But I guess I've always had the news bug. Back to Binghamton, this is another story my wife loves to tell. We had a knock at the door one night, and it was a fireman. We were on the 3rd floor, and he says, you got to get out. The building next door is on fire. So, okay. So I didn't put my contacts or glasses on, so I don't have good vision for sure. So we head down, and she was about 8 months pregnant at the time. So we lived right down the street from the TV station. So I said, all right, I'll be right back. She goes, what are you talking about? Where are you going? I said, okay, I'm going to go get a camera so I get some video of the fire. She said, no, you're not going anywhere. I said, all right, well, come on, let's go. So we walked down to the TV station, got a camera, came back to the fire. I shot some video of the fire. It was horrible video because I didn't have my contacts on. They got about 20 usable seconds out of it, but we got the story. So the news bug had bit me, but every time she tells the story, people look at me and like kind of with a look like, "You did what?" That sort of thing. But I've been very fortunate over the years to be very honored by Natus as well as the Cleveland Press Club. Lucky to be inducted into the Cleveland Press Club Hall of Fame with a lot of people that really affected my career. When I first got to town, I had an idea in my head, and that was, these people know more than you. Keep your mouth shut and your ears open. And that's pretty much what I did for a number of years. I think if I were to advise the young folks, that would be my advice to them. The other thing about young folks is, listen to what the person you're interviewing is telling you. I see a lot of reporters these days, they're looking down at their notes when the person's answering. Talk to people, learn how to communicate back and forth. Look, going on your cell phone and being on Facebook or Twitter or any of those things, it's a great way to meet people, but sources, people that are in power, go to their mother's wake, things like that. Ask them how their family's doing. You'll be connected better than you think. People don't forget stuff like that because nobody does it anymore. And so that would be my advice to the younger folks. Overall, just in general, looking at the TV business, what I talk about in the book is how it's changed. When I was a kid in the late 50s, 60s, there were very few women voices on television. Well, that certainly changed over time. Very few African Americans. That changed over time. And now we're seeing a lot more diversity. And I think a television station has to be diverse in order to reflect its diverse community. A bunch of white guys that I used to watch as a kid on the news, I don't know that they necessarily can react to somebody of Cuban heritage or whatever it is. So that would be my one observation on the positive side. I like what TV's doing with having multicultural reporters who understand, I think, some of the dilemmas that various folks are in. So anyway, the name of the book, Punched, Kicked, Spat On, and Sometimes Thanked, Memoirs of a Cleveland TV News Reporter. That's me, Paul Orlousky. I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun to write, and if you liked it, let me know. I'm not sure if I ever write another one. The pandemic really urged me on in this one, and it was a lot of fun. There's some fun pictures in here too of various people kind of attacking me or the camera. Funny joke about that none of my camera guys ever thought was funny was people say, "Well, don't you get nervous when they come at you?" I said, "No, they always go after the cameraman first." It is true, but you got to be there because you got to protect the camera guy. Or gal, because their whole side of their face, they can't see what's happening over on that side, and it's always some big guy coming at you saying something like, "We don't want you here," or something like that, and it's usually followed by them saying, "You think you're better than us, don't you?" And I'll tell you right now, young reporters, there's no right answer to that one. If you say yes, they think that you think you are better. If you say no, well, then you're kind of empowering them. I guess the right answer maybe is, I didn't say that. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the book.